My best friend's boyfriend cheated on her with 4 different girls, so I became the 5th and made sure I was the last. Lori has been my best friend since kindergarten. We sat next to each other the first day because our last names lined up alphabetically, and we never stopped sitting next to each other after that. Bad haircuts, braces at the same time, her dad leaving, my mom getting sick, every terrible school dance, and every crying session on each other's bedroom floors for 20 years straight. So when Lori started dating a guy named Nico, our junior year of college, I was happy for her. She hadn't dated anyone since high school, and he looked solid at first. He picked her up from class. He remembered her restaurant order. He texted back fast. All the stuff that shouldn't matter but does when you've been alone for a while. 3 months in, she was all the way in, and I didn't blame her because she wanted it so bad, and he made it look real. Then I ran into him at a bar near campus with his arm around a girl who was definitely not Lori. He saw me and didn't even flinch. He walked right over and told me the girl was his cousin visiting from out of town. I told Lori about it, and she asked him, and he had the cousin story locked and loaded with a name and a hometown and everything. She believed him. I let it go because it wasn't my relationship, and maybe I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. 2 months later, she found messages on his phone from 3 different girls. Not flirty, full conversations, plans, photos, the kind of stuff you can't explain away with a cousin story. She confronted him and he told her she was insecure and that he needed space from someone who went through his phone. He flipped it on her. He made her apologize for finding out he was cheating. She apologized. I sat on her bed and watched her call him to say sorry for snooping, and I wanted to throw her phone out the window. He took her back like he was doing her a favor. He told her she needed to work on her trust issues, and she agreed. They stayed together 3 more months, and during that time, he cheated with at least 1 more girl because Lori's roommate Flavia saw him at a movie theater holding another girl's hand. When Lori finally ended it, he told her she'd never find any better. He said that to her face. She cried for She stopped going to her Thursday night pottery class. She stopped eating lunch at our usual spot because she was scared of running into. This guy took up space in her life for almost a year and left her smaller than found her, and then walked around campus like nothing happened. That's when I decided Nico needed to understand exactly what did. I waited 3 months until Lori was doing better. She knew what I was going to do. She told me not to. Then she told me to be careful. Then she asked me to tell her everything after. Lori still had his location from when they dated because he never turned it off. I started showing up at the same gym he went to. I didn't approach him. I just showed up. I wore my gym clothes and did my routine and didn't look at him once for 2 weeks. He came to me first. Of course he did. He asked if I was new there and I said I'd been coming a while. He didn't recognize me because the last time he saw me was at that bar a year ago, and I'd cut my hair since then. He asked for my number after the 3rd conversation. I gave it to him. We started texting every day. He was consistent. He was attentive. He remembered everything I said and brought it up later to prove he was listening. The same moves he used on Lori. I recognized everyone because Lori had described them to me in detail when she was falling for him. The pickups, the remembered orders, the fast texts. It was a routine. He had it memorized like a script. I played along 2 months. I let him take me to dinners and drive me around and talk about his future like I was going to be in it. I laughed at his jokes when I needed to laugh. I asked the right follow-up questions. I let him think he was the interesting one in every conversation. He told me he'd never felt this way about anyone before. He said it in the same voice he probably practiced in the mirror, low and serious, with a pause after like he was letting the weight of it sink in. He told me he'd been hurt in his last relationship by a girl who didn't trust him. He told me he was looking for someone who wouldn't be paranoid and jealous. He used Lori's heartbreak as a sympathy prop to make himself look like the victim. He rewrote the entire story so he was the one who got cheated on emotionally. He told me his ex was crazy and possessive and made him feel trapped. He said all of this about a girl who apologized to him for catching him cheating. By month 3, he was telling me he loved me. He met my roommate Sylvia. He added my friends on all his accounts. He was talking about us getting a place together after graduation. He was all the way in. I made sure of it. Every text he sent me I saved. Every lie about Lori I screenshot with timestamps. Every voicemail where he trashed her I kept. I had the Tuesday night message he sent me about how special I was, matched with the identical message he'd sent Lori 8 months earlier. Word for word, not similar, exact. I had a voicemail where he called Lori damaged in that flat, cold voice. I had screenshots of him liking other girls' photos on the same days he was telling me I was the only one. I made it impossible to misread and impossible to explain away. The night I was going to put it in front of him was a Saturday, and I was ready. Then he moved first. He must have sensed something because he started acting paranoid that last week, asking me who I was with and why I took so long to reply. I played it off. I don't know what tipped him, but by Friday he knew something was wrong. He went into full defense mode. He didn't block me, he just went offensive. He started messaging people in my life. He messaged my roommate Sylvia first. He told her I'd been stalking him for months. He told her I showed up at his gym on purpose and pretended to be someone new. He told her I was obsessed with him. He told her I was dangerous. I found out Saturday morning when Sylvia called me from down the hall instead of just knocking on my door. She answered the phone in that careful voice people use when they're trying not to pick a side. My whole body went cold, not because any of it was true, because of how fast he moved. He didn't sit with getting caught even for one night. He went home and started working the phones. I walked out of my room and found Sylvia at the table with her coffee looking at me like she wasn't sure what to believe. I sat down and told her Nico had cheated on Lori with 4 girls, and I had proof of everything. I told her he didn't even recognize me at the gym because he didn't care enough about Lori to remember what her best friend looked like. Sylvia nodded slowly, but I could see the hesitation on her face. She said she believed me, but the way he was telling it made me sound dangerous, and that was the thing about Nico that made him so good at what he did. He didn't need people to fully believe, he just needed them to doubt. He just needed to plant a question mark so when I showed up the truth, they'd already be looking at sides. He'd done exact same, and she found those messes he made crazy. He made the discovery the crime instead of cheat. Now he was doing it to me. I found out later he'd messaged at least 6 people from my circle. He found them through the accounts he added during those 3 months when he was playing the perfect boyfriend. Same version of events to all of them. That I was a stalker, that I was unhinged, that I was jealous of his relationship with Lori. He took the truth, flipped it inside out, and handed it to people like breaking news. If I didn't do something fast, his version was going to become the one people remembered. I called Lori. She answered on the 2nd ring like she'd been waiting for it. I said, he's flipping it. A pause on the other end. Then, show them everything. That was all I needed. I sat down and organized everything by date. Context next to each screenshot. Timelines matched attached so you could see that on the same day he sent me a message about how special I was, he also liked 3 photos from a girl he'd been talking to behind my back. I pulled up the messages where he called Lori crazy and paranoid and put them next to the ones where he'd called me smart and strong. I pulled up the voicemail where he called her damaged and put it right next to the one where he told me he'd never met anyone like me. I wanted people to see the patterns side by side. I wanted them to see the factory line. I was halfway through when my phone buzzed with a text from Hercules. Hercules was a mutual friend who'd known me since freshman year. Good guy. The kind of person everyone trusts because he doesn't talk just to talk. And when he says something, people listen. His message said Nico had called him with wild stuff about me, and he'd told Nico he'd known me 4 years, and I wasn't the person Nico was describing. He asked what I needed. I stared at that message a long time. I texted him back and said I needed people to hear the truth before his version became the only one. His response came back in under a minute. Already on it. Hercules set up a get-together at his place for that same night. Nothing big, just the people Nico had already contacted with his lies. I was going to walk in there with my phone and let Nico's own words do the talking. I called Flavia and asked if she'd come and tell people what she saw at the movie theater. She didn't even pause. She said she'd watched him hold that girl's hand and come home to Lori like nothing happened, and she should have said something louder back then. Her voice had a heaviness to it, like she'd been carrying that guilt a long time and was finally getting the chance to put it down. Sylvia came through in a way I didn't expect. I came home from errands and she was on the couch with her laptop open and a look on her face like she'd read something that made her feel dirty. She'd gone back through every message Nico had sent her and realized the language was a script. Same careful word choices. Same soft tone that sounds like concern, but is really control. Same way he always structured his lies. Starting with something true and slowly bending it until you were nodding along without realizing you'd been turned around. She closed the laptop and said, "I'll be at the gathering. Whatever you need." I hugged her because I didn't have words for how much that meant. The night before the gathering, my phone buzzed with a notification from an account I didn't recognize. It was Nico from a burner. The message said, "You're going to regret this. Nobody's going to believe you over me." I read it 3 times. The first was shock. The second was anger. The third time I smiled because he'd just handed me the last piece of evidence I needed. I screenshot it and added it to the folder right at the end. After the love texts and the lies about Lori and the voicemail where he called her damaged, that was going to be the last thing people saw. Not the charm, not the smooth words, the threat, the real Nico. Saturday night we walked into Hercules' place. 15 people, not too big, not too small, just enough people Nico couldn't control the room, but not so many that the truth would get lost in the noise. Lori was calmer than I'd seen her in over a year. Sylvia and Flavia came together. Hercules met us at the door with a nod that said everything without saying anything. We got drinks and spread out and acted normal. Someone had put on a playlist that was mostly old songs everyone knew. It felt easy. It felt like any other weekend. And then Nico walked in. He came in with that walk he had, the one where his shoulders were back and his chin was up and his whole body moved like he was the main character in the room. He waved at a couple people. He grabbed a drink and laughed at something someone said and settled into a conversation near the window like he didn't have a single thing to worry about. Hercules had invited him and told him it was just a casual hangout. He had no idea what was waiting. Then his eyes found me. His smile tightened for half a second. He didn't leave. He thought he'd already won. He thought the messages he'd sent my friends that week had done the job. He thought I was the one who should be embarrassed to be in the same room as him. He thought wrong. About 10 minutes in, he walked up to me with a smug grin and said loud enough for everyone near to hear, "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be too embarrassed." He said it like he was joking, but his eyes weren't laughing. He was performing. He was trying to set the tone early, trying to make me the one on the back foot. I looked at him and I smiled. A real smile. The kind you give someone when you know something they don't. "Actually, I was hoping you'd come. There's some stuff I think everyone should hear." His eyes went narrow. That wasn't the response he was ready for. He was expecting me defensive, maybe flustered, maybe walking away. Instead, I was calm and steady and smiling, and that threw him because he didn't have a script for a girl who wasn't afraid of him. Hercules walked over before Nico could answer. His timing was perfect. Hands in his pockets, easy casual tone. "Hey, I want to clear something up. Nico, you called me last week and told me some stuff about her. Only fair she gets to respond, right?" The room quieted. Not all at once, but in that wave that happens when people nearby catch a change in tone and stop their own conversations to listen. The music felt softer now. Nico looked at Hercules and then around at the faces starting to turn his way. He shrugged like he had zero concerns. Sure, got nothing to hide. That was the last confident thing he said all night. I pulled out my phone. I had the folder open and ready. I didn't rush. I looked around the room to make sure people were paying attention, and then I looked at Nico. Nico told me his last girlfriend was crazy, possessive, and emotionally abusive. His last girlfriend is standing right there. I pointed at Lori. She was 6 feet away, arms at her sides, chin up, face completely still. Her name is Lori. She's been my best friend since kindergarten. She found messages from 3 different girls on his phone. When she confronted him, he made her apologize. He told her she'd never find anyone better. The room went dead silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silent where you can hear the ice settling in someone's cup. Every single person was looking at either me or Nico. His face changed. The smug grin was gone. Something moved behind his eyes. Fast and desperate. Like an animal looking for a way out of a box. That's not what happened. Flat. Smaller. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I just started reading. The text where he called Lori damaged. The one where he said being with her was like babysitting. Then the message he sent me about how he'd never felt this way before matched against the same message he sent Lori 8 months earlier. Same words. Identical. Then I played the voicemail. I held my phone up and hit play, and his own voice filled the room. That cold, flat tone I remembered from the first time I listened to it. Him saying Lori was suffocating. Him saying he needed someone who wasn't damaged. Him laughing once at the end. A short, dry laugh, like he'd made himself smile. The word just hung in the air after it ended. Damaged. Someone near the back whispered something they didn't finish. A girl by the couch put her hand over her mouth. A guy I'd never talked to before actually took a step back from where Nico was standing, like the distance itself was a statement. I watched the faces around the room change one by one. He wasn't the charming guy with the easy smile anymore. He was the guy on that voicemail. He was the guy in those texts. He was the guy who called a girl damaged because she loved him too much much to see what he was doing. Then Nico did what he does when he runs out of charm. He didn't explain the texts. He didn't deny the voicemail. He didn't apologize. He turned to Lori and his face twisted into something ugly. He pointed at her and said, "This is your fault. You couldn't let it go. You had to send your attack dog after me." The room sucked in a breath. He wasn't done. His voice got louder and rougher. "You were my mistake. You hear me? You were the mistake I made." He said that in front of 15 people. He called a girl he'd already broken a mistake to her face like she was a bill he forgot to pay. And that was the moment the room turned. I could feel it. Every shred of benefit of the doubt anyone had left for him disappeared. He did my job for me. All I had to do was give him enough rope and he tied it around his own neck. Lori stepped forward. Her hands weren't shaking. Her voice didn't crack. "You told me I was the problem. You told me I was crazy for finding proof you were cheating. You made me apologize for being right. I believed you. I stopped going to places I loved because I was afraid of seeing you. You made me smaller. And then you walked around like you did nothing wrong." He opened his mouth. "I'm not done." 2 words. His mouth closed. The whole room was locked on her and she wasn't giving the floor back. "You know what the worst part is? You didn't even remember her." She pointed at me. "My best friend. The girl who sat next to me every day since kindergarten. You looked right at her at that gym and didn't recognize her because I never mattered enough for you to remember the people in my life. You learned my restaurant order but you couldn't remember my best friend's face. That's how little I was to you." His jaw locked. I could see the muscles in his neck tighten like cables pulling against each other. He had nothing. For the second time that night, he had absolutely nothing to say because there was no spin for that. There was no angle. Then Flavia's voice cut across the room. She hadn't moved from where she was standing, but her voice carried just fine on its own. "I saw you at the movie theater, Nico. You were holding hands with some girl 3 weeks before Lori found those messages. I told her about it and she defended you. She said maybe it was a friend. That's how much she trusted you, and that's what you did with it." His eyes went face to face, searching for one person who might throw him a look that said, "I believe you." Not one. Not a single face in that room had anything for him. Hercules was by the door with his arms crossed. Sylvia was shaking her head slowly like she was watching something she'd always known was coming. A guy who'd played intramural soccer with Nico was looking at his drink like it had answers in it. Another guy kept shifting his weight from foot to foot, uncomfortable in a way you can't hide. Every person Nico had messaged that week was standing in that room looking at him like they were seeing him for the first time. And in a way they were. This was the version only girls like Lori and me ever got to see behind closed doors. The one who shows up when the charm stops working and there's nowhere left to hide. Sweating, cornered, smaller than I had ever seen him. And then he made his last move. He held his phone up like it was evidence in a courtroom and his voice came out shaky and desperate. "She stalked me. She tracked my location. She showed up at my gym on purpose. That's not normal." I let him finish. I didn't interrupt. I let every word land and settle in the room and then I responded. My voice was calmer than it had any right to be. "You never turned off your location sharing after dating Lori. I walked into a public gym. You approached me. You asked for my number. You texted me every day. You told me you loved me. You met my roommate. You talked about moving in together. All I did was stand still and let you do what you always do." I held my phone up. The screen faced the room. The screenshot of his burner message from the night before. "And then you sent me this. You're going to regret this. Nobody's going to believe you over me. That's your actual message from last night. So tell me again who the dangerous one is." The room broke open. Not loud. More like a dam that cracks and the water comes through in a steady push. Low voices started up everywhere. People leaning toward each other and whispering. People pulling out their own phones, scrolling back through whatever Nico had sent them that week, reading his words with new eyes, seeing the script for what it was now that they knew it was a script. A girl near the window showed her phone to the guy next to her and shook her head. 2 guys by the couch glanced at Nico with a look somewhere between disgust and disbelief. The whole room was recalculating and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Hercules stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. "I think you should go, man. It wasn't mean. It wasn't aggressive. It was just final." Nico stood there. His charm was gone. His script was empty. Every trick he'd ever used to get out of situations like this, the soft voice, the fake laugh, the she's crazy card, all of it was used up and lying in pieces on the floor around him. He looked at Lori one more time. She didn't look away. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She held his gaze like she was daring him to say one more word. He broke first. He turned and walked out. The door clicked behind him and somehow it was louder than anything said all night. Lori turned to me. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. I can't believe I apologized to him. I pulled her into a hug. "You never have to again." He transferred gyms. Lori went back to her Thursday class. She ordered her usual at lunch on Monday.